Hello there, everyone. Happy Higher Self Wednesday. I'm Karen White, and I am the author of this wonderful book, Changing the Game Plan, which is my 12-step journey of how I work the 12 steps. It is a workbook. It is meant to work with someone, a sponsor, a therapist, a counselor, someone. It's not meant to work on your own. I use 4 books and 4 books only because all 4 of my sponsors have taught me through 4 books, and that is the Al-Anon 12 and 12, the Al-Anon ODAT, the AA Big Book, and the AA 12 and 12. So those are the only 4 books that I use to work my steps. And that is what is available in my book. And I'm so excited. I'm excited about the new year. I'm excited about us being in step 1. The book is available to you on Amazon.com, so you can go out there. Also, if you like to reach me, you can by going to Programchild.net. That's Programchild, one word, .net, and it is right there before you. And yes, I love all the support. And yes, if I'm able to speak for your groups or whatever, and I can, and I have the availability for your conferences or whatever, I would be more than happy to do that. So just go out to Programchild.net. I am so excited. I'm ready to jump in. We are in step 1, and this is the new year, the beginning of the year, and step 1 is what we're going to do this whole month of January. And like all the other videos that I've done, I always like to start off because in changing the game plan, one of the things that I'm really push is that we need to know what these steps mean. And the only way that we can do that is by looking up every word in that step, because our founders, Dr. Bob and Bill, they were very specific about the words that they use to do these steps. And so when you go in and you look up the words, you really find the meaning and the heart and the root of what they are trying to portray to us, to get down in us, so that we can make these changes that we're so desiring to make when we come into this program. I do like to always qualify. I'm in both sides of this program. I'm in the addictive side and I'm in the non-side. And I'm teaching the 12 steps in both programs, because our program comes from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It doesn't matter what program you're in. You can be in NA, Sex Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, any program that you are in. Your steps come from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that should be a book that you have, because that's our Bible in this program. So I'm going to start off by reading the definitions of what these words mean. And it says we. We means and the rest of the group that includes you and I. Admitted means to allow, scope for, to concede as true and valid. We, again, means I and the rest of the group that includes you and me. Were, the plural form or past tense, means to be, and the singular form used with you. Powerlessness or powerless means lacking strength or power, helpless and total ineffectual, without power or authority. Powerful, powerful. Over means in or at a position above or higher than. And I love that, over, because powerlessness is so important, and we're trying to defeat that by coming above that, and that's what over means. Alcohol, a colorless flammable liquid, that means used to refer to one's designation, implied, mentioned, or understood. R means belonging to or associated with all people in general. Lives mean plural, the course of existence or sum of experience or actions. Become, I love this word, become, means to grow or come to be. Unmanageable means difficult or impossible to manage. And that's the definition of step one. And we're going to jump in and study. And if you haven't, last week there's a video before this one that we talked, and we talked exclusively from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this week I'm going to take our studying on step one from the AA 12 and 12. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to jump in, and we're going to take it from there. Step one says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. Now, I'm going to be jumping through this because I'm going to read my highlighted areas and share my experience, strength, and hope. And I always say, take what you like and leave the rest. So I will be telling you where I'm at, what paragraph I'm talking from. So get your AA 12 and 12 out, and let's go. I'm on page 21, and the first paragraph, it starts off like this. Who cares to admit complete defeat? Practically no one, of course. Every natural instinct cries out against the idea of personal powerlessness. It is truly awful to admit that, glass in hand, we have warped our minds into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of providence can remove it from us. This was probably the hardest step that I took, and that's why I believe without a shadow of a doubt this step is so important, because without taking this step you cannot move to 11, you cannot even move to 2. These steps are meant to work in order. And I remember coming in here, and to my definition of powerlessness meant weak, meant failure, meant could have done better, meant try harder. It was just all totally warped. So therefore, I took powerlessness as being totally defeated. And the word means lacking strength or power, helpless and total ineffectual, without power or authority. But once you allow yourself to become powerless over something, you give the power away for it to destroy you. And you also give the power away so that you, whatever the situation is, you can let go of it and then start to defeat it. And so when I finally came to realization that I was powerless over this thing and my life had become unmanageable, that's when I can open up to the program, open up to hearing my sponsor, open up to hearing what people were saying in meetings, open up to what they were telling me in the literature that I needed to do to stop my addiction, and then on my non-side, stop my controlling. So it was the best thing that ever happened to me, is to learn about powerlessness and learn that it was not a defeat, that it was a strength. Now, the AA 12 and 12, I'm going to jump down a little bit. It says, it goes on to say, no kind of bankruptcy is like this one. Alcohol now becomes the rapiest creditor, bleeds us of all self-sufficiency and all will to resist its demands. Once this stark fact is accepted, our bankruptcy as going human concern is complete. I love that. It goes on to say, but upon entering AA, we soon take quite another view of this absolute humiliation. I love that it says that. We perceive that only through utter defeat we are able to take our first steps toward liberation and strength. Our admission of personal powerlessness finally turns out to be the firm bedrock upon which happy and a purposeful life can be built. And I'm going to go on to the next one, and then I'm going to talk. It says, we know that little good can come to any alcoholic who joins AA unless he first accepts his devastating weakness and all its consequences. Until he so humbles himself, his sobriety, if any, will be precautious. Now remember, we're talking at this. So no matter what program you're in, when you see alcohol, you just put Al-Anon in there, because you use these steps too. If you're, when saying alcohol, you put gamblers, you put overeating, you put whatever it is, because our program comes from this, and we still work our program just like the original alcoholics that wrote this literature worked this program. I love that it talks about here. It says, but upon AA, we soon take another view. This is absolute humiliation. And it goes on to say, we perceive that only through utter defeat are we able to take the first step toward liberation and strength. That is so important to understand, because when you're sharing this and you're sharing the 12-step program and you're trying to bring somebody to their powerlessness, it is something that I use in the book, Changing the Game Plan. I use the example in there of taking a bottle of alcohol. And I don't care what program or where you're at, just listen to this for a minute. If you take a bottle of alcohol or a bottle of water or anything and you put it in your body, can you tell it what to do once it's into your body or your system? No, you can't. You can't say, oh, water, go down my right hand and a little bit in my nail and miss the right hip but hit the toe. Nothing like that. You cannot tell it what to do. It becomes powerless. And since we're dealing with diseases, whether we're in AA or NA, we're dealing with the diseases that we're dealing with. In the same with the family gets infected. So if you're in Al-Anon or anything like that, you have to understand that you are totally powerless. You are wiped out. There is nothing that you can do. You cannot do anything over your addiction without help. And this program is not designed to work alone. That's why you have the we's, the us, the thems, and all that. If it had not been for meetings and a sponsor, I would have never, ever gotten through my addictive side of this program at all, because it was very hard for me to understand why come I couldn't stop doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to stop. Why come every time I started it, I just went crazy and I just kept going, and I never could stop. It was just like, it was just fiending me. And then on my non-side, the controlling, the wanting, that person to stop drugging or drinking when I said so, or wanting my employees to do what I wanted them to do when I said so. I became what I called, I always say, a boss. I don't believe in that word boss. I believe in leadership. I believe that we have leaders, not bosses. Because if you ever read about George Washington and all these leaders, they're leaders. They're not bosses. But when you start telling people what to do and wanting them to do what you want to do and demanding stuff from yourself that you can't do, you become bossy. And bossiness is very rippling. And I rip myself apart. I rip myself apart. My disappointment with myself when I came in this room was unbelievable. I'm so glad that my first meeting was on steps 1, 2, and 3, because this is what I got to hear. The very first thing that I got to hear was this step. And I was so happy to know that I didn't have to do anymore, that there were people out there that were going to help me, and that they could help me get back to where I needed to get to with what I was going through at that time, and that I could stop doing what I was doing. That was so important. Even though I thought when I came in these rooms, I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be maybe a quick fix, because I personally had never heard of AA and Al-Anon and 12 steps and nothing. I came in the room for the first time, and that was my first time ever knowing about this program. So over 33 years ago. So now, how do I use this now? This is very important, because the steps never go away. You have to learn to use these steps consistently in your life on a daily basis. I always say I'm calling on the steps. I'm always calling on the steps. Step one, go in the store, talking to somebody, they start acting nasty or I have to call on my steps, because if I don't call on my steps, I always say, I am powerless over her. Her life has become unmanageable. My life has become unmanageable if I go into what she's doing. And because of working the steps and understanding how to work this step as far as being powerless today, Powerless brought me peace. Powerless brought me a calmness that I had never felt before. Powerless brought me to a place where I didn't feel so responsible, not so in demand of, because I was putting myself in positions that I was making myself in demand of, and nobody was demanding that of me. I was putting myself in those types of situations. So coming into my powerlessness was very, very important in this program, because that is what got me prepared to go on to take the next steps. But that is not the most important word in here. The most important word that connected to that for me was unmanageable, because being powerless was one thing, but the only way I could take that is realizing that I was unmanageable, and that means difficult or impossible to manage. And if you're on your addictive side, oh my God, you can't manage you, they can't manage you. It's a hot mess. And you're looking, when you finally bottom out and you get to the point where you're bottoming out, but you're still going back and doing it over again, and you keep saying to yourself, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And then you're bottoming out, but then the next day or the next hour or whatever, you're doing it again and again and again. It makes you so sick. And I didn't realize that my life had become unmanageable. I just kept thinking, try better, just stop, just do what you need to do. Or when I was on my non-side, it was, just try harder to control the situation. You could do it. Try something different. Do you know that there was one time when I was in my non-side, I was literally writing down the next thing to do and scratching it off on a piece of paper, really writing it down. I'm going to do this. I'm going to control this by this. I'm going to do that. And literally scratching it off as being defeated. Nothing was working. I was literally watching myself on paper, not being able to get anything done. And so I was unmanageable. And the unmanageability is what causes us to really bottom out. And without that, it's very hard. And we're going to talk about that next week, and we're going to get into more of this next week, because I'm going to stay in the AA 12 and 12 for next week. But it's very, very hard to be in that position without somebody there to help you. Because without somebody there to help you, when you bottom out like that, you just go back to it. But when you have somebody there to help you, their experience, strength, and hope as they're sharing it with you can help lift you out of it and put you in a better place, because they're sharing with you how they got through it. And it works, because when we share in this program, it's something about the honesty of this program that it touches us, and we can feel that it's already working as they're speaking it in us. We can feel if we can just do that, it's going to work. And I remember I used to feel like that all the time in meetings. I was like, it was just like I always say, big salve. It was penetrating me. Somebody would share something about how they had went through something I had been through. And as they were sharing how they got through it, it was penetrating me. And I knew that if I could do it like that, it would work. And with the guidance of sponsorship or counselors, therapists, whatever you're going through in the 12-step program, we have sponsorship. My sponsor just led me precept upon precept, had me trying, had me practicing things, teaching me behavior changes, teaching me about mood swings, teaching me different things and connecting the dots to help me to be able to become the person that I needed to be in step one as a powerless, unmanageable person that now has the strength to move on and get done in her life what she needs to get done. Well, that's all the time that I have. Thank you so much. I will be with you next Wednesday. I will make sure that at noon every Wednesday, you will have a new video on YouTube. So go out there at noon, subscribe. If you hit the bell, as soon as I post it, it will let you know. Happy Higher Self Wednesday. Remember, go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps, and get healthy. And blessings over you today, great people.